Good afternoon, good evening, and good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the Ambassador Wing. And the final installment of Council of the Ones Babylon 5 review. Granted, the Council will continue on once we do Crusade, but for today, we have reached Journey's End. This is part 2 of our two-part review on Sleeping in Light, and with me, as always, you know him, you love him, is Mountains of Elysium, and, well, call him late, but never call him late for dinner, Council Member Zod Rider. Zod, good to see you, buddy.
Good to
Yay.
see you too. Good to see both of you.
So, and today, as I said, we have reached the end of one journey, and that is, of course, season 5 of Babylon 5, the final season of the main show. And today we'll be sharing our thoughts, and also Councilmember Koj has been kind enough to send me a couple of transmissions or anything, since he is waylaid in med bay and everything, sharing his thoughts on Sleeping in Light. So we'll bring those up here in a few minutes. But want to say hello to the chat as always. Those of you that are lurking, those of you that are active in the chat, thank you for being here today, and hope you all enjoy the stream. So, anyway, that being said, if this is your first visit, welcome, welcome. Glad that you're here. But if you are a regular, as always, we appreciate you being here and hope you all enjoy the stream. So, with all being said, guys, Sleeping in Light, part 2. It feels somewhat surreal that we finally reached the end of the main series. I never thought we would actually. I mean, I knew we would eventually get here, but I didn't realize it would take so long.
Yes.
I'm not necessarily saying that as a bad thing. It's just wow.
It's been some journey.
Yes, it has. So, anyways, as I said, Council Member Zod, Lord Koj, has been good enough to send a couple of videos or anything sharing his thoughts on Sleeping in Light. So I'm going to bring up, well, part 1 of his video. So give me just 1 second to do that. And we'll hear what Koj has to say about Sleeping in Light. 1 second. All right. All right. Councilmember Koj, my friend. Whether, granted, you're not here, but buddy, the floor is yours.
Unfortunately, I could not be there. I am at the hour of the show. I am in med lab, as we say, in our show here, Council of Ones. Busy at work, but this is the last episode, and I have just finished watching it. And before making this, I rewatched part 1. So I'm all up to speed with not repeating anything that hasn't been said before. You know, everyone said a lot of great things, especially the thing that irks me the most that everyone brought up is the fact that Lockley isn't there. Lockley, who pretty much picked up a see being in charge of Babylon 5 station is very, very important. And it was passed on from Sinclair to Sheridan and technically to Ivanova too, even though Sheridan was the top in command there, top in the chain of command. That's what I want to say. And then that was passed on to Lockley. So to see this is like kind of a little wormy here. I just feel like they needed to keep her in there because after she earned her stripes by the end of season 5, we love Lockley. I'm a Lockley fan. I warmed up. She warmed up to me real quick. I trusted Lockley, and when we had the Day of the Dead episode, of course that sealed the deal for everybody. But yeah, I think they should have used her and unfortunately, I think they just kept everything that they shot because, as Fiona brought up, this was shot as originally the season finale of season 4, and I believe I forgot where. I think it was on the DVD actually. JMS, yeah, it's actually on the commentary for Sleeping in Light. JMS mentions that this was shot in during season 4, but it was not edited together until after they finished in season 5. So in a way, it was edited or completed after season 5 was done. So that's probably why the pacing matches season 5 and the audio matches season 5. Which brings me to my what I was saying about Lockley is that if I was a JMS, I would have had that Lockley was running the station towards the end. Either she and have it that she came back. So she can't be at the station forever, or maybe the longest, but I could see her going away maybe for a short period of time, but out of sentimental value, come back and oversee the station towards the end. And then have it that Zach Allen actually is the one who never left. And that would also, though, pose a complication of why Ranger didn't get to Zach Allen. But I don't know. That's the problem. I don't really think is as big of a deal as not having Lockley there. I mean, come on, man. Anyways, I understand, but I feel they could have went the extra mile, especially when they did in the episode before this, when Delenn was leaving the station and she was telling everyone that in Bombari, they do not really have a word for goodbye because they don't really understand that concept because everyone is meant to be reunited at some point in form or plane of existence, whatever. And while they shot all that, I think they could have easily done some hair and makeup with Bruce Boxleiter for a little bit, and then same with Lockley. Maybe shoot the next day at that same set, and or the one where he comes on board. They could have a little thing, and actually maybe they could have it that they had a little walk along, and then they decided to split up at some point, and he was walking by himself and ran into Zach Allen. That would have been nice. And yeah, so that's one problem. My second problem with this episode is Delenn did her season 3 season 4 soap opera kind of. I don't know, I just noticed a lot because my problem with season 3 and 4 with the love story with Sheridan and Delenn was that they had this every now and then. Delenn would either dramatically break away from eye contact and then keep walking closer to the camera and talking with her back to the person. So rude. It's like the soap opera thing. They do that just to get more physicality and walking by because some more visual action, and also it's very easy to light the actors' faces when they're both looking in the same direction at the camera. Well, not at the camera, not striking the camera, but looking off in the direction of the camera, and then you can just light both of their faces, and it's freaking easy. But it feels so forced, and I hate it. It's so soap opera-y. I don't know if this makes sense to any of you, but it irks me every time they're talking, and then she turns away and continues talking while walking slowly. But and then the fact that she just like turned it when he was coming in to hug her. And I'm talking about the scene when they last see each other. Yes, I'm getting nitpicky on that scene because I have to be nitpicky because that scene is so emotional that every single word that they say, if you look at it and not know who these people are, you'd probably say this is the cheesiest stuff you've ever seen written. You're like, well, this is the worst Hallmark card I've ever seen. I'm not buying. I'm not paying $3.95 for that. Or if it's specially sealed, then $4.95. But whatever. It's still like, $7 overpriced for that kind of cheesy. But knowing these characters and knowing how much they love each other and being with them through thick and thin of 5 years and everything that they're saying, and this is the last moment that they're saying goodbye, which came quickly to Delenn because Sheridan's the one who decided to strategically leave without saying goodbye to people. I think it's just hard, and he just wants everyone to feel good and comfortable, which is why he hasn't seen David. But the point is, everything that they were saying in that moment broke my heart, and it was just so it was so beautiful that, man, I was just on the ground, uh getting emotional. I got those tears, manly tears. It's like, that scene, it breaks the heart, and the fact that he didn't turn around and look at her, I think that was well done. If he turned back, I think that would have not helped moving on or something, because I like that he had to go to the sea as opposed to what her friends have done. Drawl actually did. He was on his way to go to the sea, and I think that journey is really cool because he's very much been Bari, having known Delenn in his like ways, and I like seeing Sheridan in his at this stage in life, because he's kind of like, if like a, I don't know, he reminds me of like some sea captain who's been on so many adventures, and he could have just so many times he could have died, but he lived. Well, he did die, but he just seems like he's battle weary, and he's just ready to rest after a long time. And I think this part of this episode specifically is very much like the ending of Lord of the Rings, where there's some time that passes. Excuse me. Whoa, almost had a hiccup there or something. Where Frodo joins Gandalf and everyone to go to the west, and on our way beyond the rim.
I just want to pause here for a minute because Elysium, Zodrider, your thoughts on what Kojay's brought up thus far.
I've actually never heard anybody really say anything negative about Sleeping in Light. So I find this very compelling, listening to, Kojay sort of break down several issues and things that I never actually thought of, because I can honestly say the very first time that I saw Sleeping in Light, I cried like a baby. I was so caught in my feelings over the episode, over it being the end of an era, over it being the end of, there was a good chance we were never going to see any of these characters again. It's for me, it's a very, very emotional powerhouse of an episode. And I guess because that's where the episode how the episode resonates with me, I never gave any thought to any of these little things that Kojay is pointing out. So, again, it's really interesting listening to the different things that Kojay is saying right now, honestly.
Yeah. Elysium, what about you, bud?
I think for me, it wasn't just the first time. As Bird of Prey 5 says, I had soot in my eye. And not just the first time, second time, or third time. Every time I watch this episode, I'm in tears. I think this is probably the best ending to any show, science fiction, certainly science fiction, possibly in television.
Yeah, you talk about a bookend.
perfect.
Oh my God. Yeah, Babylon 5 was a novel for television, so
But I will give Kojay his due. I think it's a great take on it. Not something I considered, but you can see where he's coming from. I mean, I did joke there, gas dramatic in Minbari, but that was kind of half a joke. But I do appreciate what he's doing, and there was that element running through of I've seen Lore Runner mention the melodrama through Babylon 5 before. Now, that never really something I paid attention to, but it has been there, and maybe not as much in season 5, so it would be more evident as this was shot in season 4. And hey, LDG.
Hey, LDG, good to see you, bud.
Great to see you.
The thing for me is, and I do get what Kojay is saying. There is a certain level of melodrama in this series, and in particular in season 5. But when you're dealing with interpersonal relationships and you're dealing with a long running relationship that everybody, especially the fan base, is invested in, particularly with Sheridan and Delenn, it makes it makes sense for them to be there to be a degree of melodrama, because in real life is dramatic, and we as fans of this series, we have seen this couple go through so much, literally go through life and death, quite literally, particularly for John. And then we've even seen what happens to them, or happens to their legacy in the years after their real life death, particularly with the episode Deconstruction of Falling Stars. And you see their thoughts, their ideas, their very image tried to be perverted into something that it never was. I mean, Sheridan was never a megalomaniac. He wasn't evil. Was he driven? Yeah, he was absolutely driven, but he was never as he was personified in Deconstruction of Falling Stars, particularly with that section where we're seeing holographic representations of Sheridan, Delenn, Franklin, and Garibaldi. So it's not easy to see our heroes be deconstructed or even be abused in that way. But what we have with Sleeping in Light is Sheridan's last goodbye to his family and to his friends. His family, of course, being Delenn. And also, you could say even his friends are his family, particularly Ivanova and Garibaldi, Veer to a lesser extent, and Franklin, obviously, as well. And it should be said that this episode, while it lacks action, it doesn't lack tension. And if you think about it, the last 3 episodes of season 5 of B5 are without any big action set pieces. It's mostly dialogue driven. And I think that's appropriate because everybody's moving on. Everybody's going their separate ways. Some people going very far away, in particular with Lanier. And this episode really brings home the fact that this is Journey's End. And I love the fact that Kojay did reference Lord of the Rings, Return of the King, the epilogue, when Frodo goes with Gandalf and Galadriel and Elrond and even Bilbo into the West. He's laying down his burden and leaving all that pain and heartache that is behind him. And you could say the same for Sheridan. He's leaving everything that's caused him pain behind. And it's as I've said before, is a testament to JMS as a story writer and as a creative, that he was able to hook us into these characters on such a deep personal level. And this is our goodbye to Sheridan and Delenn and all of them. We will miss them. So,
go ahead, I would like in Lord of the Rings I'm not sure is it in that Sam himself went to the sea, and I'd like to have thought that after the deconstruction of Falling Stars, I think set 100 years later, I believe it was the second thing, where Delenn comes and admonishes the academics that are crapping all over the work they done.
Yeah,
that maybe she too went to the sea, and her and Sheridan would be beyond the rim. It was something I know that was not what happened, but I know JMS has been a huge fan of Lord of the Rings, and you see that element running through the entire series. And it's something in my own headcanon I'd like to have seen, but I know that's not the sort of universe JMS created. And it is a wonderful universe. But still, like in my own head, it would have been nice. Not that I wanted to see it, but a bit of me did.
Yeah, no,
Not that it
I
should have
get
been, I
it.
should say. Sorry.
No, I completely agree with you, Elysium. All right, let's continue on with Kojay's thoughts here. So 1 second. What the heck? All right, hang on. All right, hang on, guys. StreamYard is being all glitchy and crappy at the moment.
Yes, I noticed.
So, hang on. All right, gonna have to reopen a couple of tabs here, so just bear with me for a second. We were at the 8-minute mark, I think, so won't be too hard to get back to where we were.
It was just, I'm just reading through the lurkers guide there, and I'll put the link in there in a moment.
Mhm.
That JMS was asked, as you're setting it up, as JMS was, people knew that Sleeping in Light had been shot, and he was asked, are you worried about spoilers getting out as it's already been shot and it's not out until season 5? He said, not really, as only about 4% of people will actually pay attention to the real spoilers. So for the other 96%, it'll still have the desired effect, which is a nice way of, just accepting that the spoiler is possible, but still plowing ahead without changing his vision to avoid that.
Right. So, okay, I've got that. I've got it back up and running. So hang on 1 second, guys. All right, here we go. All right.
Very much the ending of Lord of the Rings, where there's some time that passes. Excuse me. Whoa, almost had a hiccup there or something. Where Frodo joins Gandalf and everyone to go to the west, and or on our way beyond the rim, sleeping in light, light being the presence of God, heaven, So it's just a reflection of his time because he's too battle weary and his spirit has been tried and tested so many times, and he's not backed down in the face of evil, and he's very tired, and also especially tired that he is technically dead. The fact that I forgot what episode it is, but Franklin's looking at what Lorian did to him, and he said he still can't understand how he did it. But there's this picture of something on his nervous system. Now, for our, and I know this from work, is that for our ability to think, feel, function, our organs, our heart to beat on its own, everything is powered by our neurological energy system, and we all have this battery of energy, and it's miraculously there, and it's beautiful, and it seems like well, pretty much that's what we need for everything of us to function. And what Lorian did, he gave this everlasting, or this energy that's keeping his nervous system going, and it's just that bit of energy is going to expire, and then he'll just slip into a sleep and pass on, or complete being dead, however you want to look at it. But I like what Fiona said, that Lorian was somewhat consciously in him in a way to go to Cygnus. What the heck? Cygnus 6? Okay. I'm ruining the word.
Coriana
I totally forgot
6.
the name of it, but I'll just say Cygnus, and you guys can correct me. I deeply apologize, but I will say Cygnus 6, where they won the Shadow War. Now, that is very specific because that is where I believe a lot of them passed on with Lorian. So maybe there's an energy spot there where they used to go through. Maybe it's like an invisible wormhole. I don't know, but that is where Lorian shows up. So I feel like he went to the west with them, like in Lord of the Rings. And where was Sheridan? He's living on Minbar. Minbar, as we've talked, culturally, has a lot of Eastern philosophies and stuff, and even in their art, they seem very Eastern-like. So if that's Eastern part of this fantasy world, then him going away is in the opposite direction, would be going into the west, just like in Lord of the Rings. So it's that similar motif of like Frodo and Sheridan being tired, and it's just their time to pass on with those before them, you know. And it's a beautiful thing because that's going to happen to all of us at some point in our life. Uh, we're going to see our friends go. We're going to lose touch with people, and we're just going to take with us everything that really matters. That's why family is important. That's why our friends are important. And not everyone's going to be with us in the end. That's just life. But in the span of 5 years, so many things change. But anyways, before I ramble about that, I think it's just beautiful how this is sleeping in light. And last time we see Sheridan close his eyes, going to that part where the energy is returned to Lorien, as Fiona so specifically said, this is his closing of this saga, the whole Babylon 5 saga. Almost like you could say Star Wars is, the story of Vader. Babylon 5 is the story of Londo, but it's also the legacy of Babylon 5 goes with Sheridan. And Sinclair has already gone. And then the last person of the three, the one is going to be Delenn. And we've already seen, how she is later on in the future as an old lady. So it's like we've kind of closed this book on everyone's life and their journey that changed within 5 years, because a lot happens in 5 years. And the span of like high school, 5 years ish, because there's a before and after, of course, that's part of the story. And there's a time frame of being in college, and all these sometimes some wars, even though it's not specifically 5 years, there's always this time period, even releasing the Snyder Cut and stuff, there's this time period of like a story, or a time you're at a job while you're getting through your studies at university to get to another job. There's just this time period where we intersect with other people in our life that are going through stuff, and for better for worse, we grow from them. We become friends with different people. We connect, and then in all our struggles and arguments and whatever, our hope is that we become better people, and we help all those around us and make a good difference, and not the backwards way where it's all destruction and stuff. And that we go to light so we can, in the end, sleep in light. So I think this is just a beautiful thing. And JMS has always drawn inspiration from the Bible and other mythologies to continue telling that story of good and evil and consequences and living with our consequences. The consequences of our choices. That's what I mean, not consequences. But every action and decision we make is very huge and defines the rest of where we're going to go. So I think we see the sum of that of each character, even though they're not with us. Oh yeah, another thing I have a gripe with this episode is that freaking Marcus, they couldn't show the first episode when he was like barely had a beard, and then they couldn't show the last footage of him where he had a full-on beard and longer hair to at least show 2 frames of him with the time pass. I thought that was kind of weird. We just saw a picture of him to the left, and we saw his driver's license on the right. Okay, so lack of Lockley and Marcus and that little soap opera moment. Those are only 3 issues. But with this episode I had. But other than that, this is such a beautiful episode. And the music, though, the music was scored for this episode, I think, around season. Actually, I have no idea. It feels like season 5 music, and I had the soundtrack to this episode too. And it's just a gorgeous, beautiful episode, a wonderful way to end everything. And like I was saying about life, it's like I saw this video, and this would be my closing thing. I don't know how long this is. I hope I didn't ramble, but there's this video I saw on Instagram. A guy, I think he was a psychologist. He was talking to a bunch of students or whatever. He was a professor. Anyways, he had a jar, empty jar, see-through glass, whatever, and put a bunch of, I think, ping pong balls in it. And he filled it up. And he said, "Everyone, does this jar look full?" And they're like, "Yeah, that's full." He's like, "All right, cool." So then he dropped these little like little tiny pebbles or rocks, and it went into the jar, filling in the spaces of the ping pong balls until it was filled to the top. And he's like, "Okay, how about now? Is it full?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it's full." He's like, "Okay, now how about this?" Then he pours in like sand, and it fills every tiny little crevice, and he shakes it, and it's all in there, and you can't put anything more in it. And he said, "All right, class, now is this full?" Or like, "Yes, it's full." And he's like, "Interesting. See how each time it was full, the ping pong balls represent your family and friends and loved ones. The pebbles represent the things that are also important to you, your job, your means of paying your bills and getting by to live and pursue, you know, um, what you got to do to stick around, take care of your car and stuff like that, right? Um, and then the sand is all the other extra stuff, every single little thing, like even a whole bunch of stuff on social media, first world problems, you know what I mean? So the thing is that in the end, all that we take with us that we see in this episode with Sheridan is those that matter. So the short time that we have here, because is very, very precious with what we should focus on, because we, as Babylon 5 has shown, and as we've seen with like how these are a lot of episodes. This is 5 years of storytelling, but it's still such a short time for like just to I don't know, just life is short is pretty much what I'm coming to, and we take it for granted, and a lot happens, and um to make the most of it, I guess, is the biggest lesson of all Babylon 5 and all great storytelling. And this story was amazing, and I'm very honored to have come upon this series. Like, I think I came on the series like Marcus did around like season 3. But uh as I'm talking about all these like long period stories, the show is amazing, and thank you so much for having me on. Sorry I rambled, but I think it was the best honest expression I could get out. So thank you, Zodwriter. Thank you, Mountains Elysium. Thank you, Fiona. And Classic Comics, I haven't really seen you. It's kind of like Sheridan and um, no, Sinclair and Zach. We never until that one episode. But yeah, anyways, shout out to you too, and thank you, Ambassador, so much for having me on, being such a wonderful host. I'm happy to call you all my friends, and to the chat, always a shout out and love. So it's been great. Looking forward to Crusade and Zooty Zoot Zoot Zoot. Much love to you. And yeah, thank you so much for having me here.
Okay, and that was part 1 of Lord Kojay's thoughts on Sleeping in Lights. So, Elysium, Zodwriter, your thoughts on anything that Kojay brought up? And I know you've been.
Kojay was definitely is definitely passionate, and like I said, I've never heard this many criticisms of Sleeping in Light. I can't. And again, it's for me, it's all a flood of emotion when it comes to this episode. So I can't. Yeah.
Well, sometimes you have to set aside the emotion and look at things.
But it's Sleeping in Light. We can't set aside emotion. It's the final episode. It's the end. It's the end of the novel. There's no you're either emotionally invested or you're not.
You can be. Here's the thing, Zod. You can be emotionally invested, but you can also look at something from a subjective and objective view as well. I mean, that's something I've often had. I mean, that's something that I do on a normal basis. I mean, I look at things at how they make me feel, but I also look at them in terms of, was this crafted well? And I have to say that all 5 seasons of Babylon 5 were crafted well. I mean, were there some filler episodes? Sure, but every series has a filler. But in terms of the overall narrative that we got with Babylon 5, seasons 1 through 5, and the TV movies as well, that filled in some of the missing gaps, or gaps that we didn't even know we want filled in, but we were glad that were. it told a solid narrative. And I want to say hello to the chat and everything. I know I said hello to him, but in Be Geek, let's talk. It's good to see you, bud. Appreciate you popping in, and we hope that your grandson is doing well in the hospital. Hope you all are doing well, and thanks for being here this afternoon. But the one analogy and everything that Koj brought up about the professor with the ping pong balls, the pebbles, and the sand, that is an analogy that I've heard before myself, particularly when I was in when I was in college, and even when I was in high school. And it's an analogy without merit. That isn't without merit, excuse me. And we oftentimes we don't focus on the ping pong balls. We focus on the sand. And that at times is to our detriment. You look at the characters in Babylon 5, they focused on the ping pong balls, not the sand, and maybe not as often as they should the pebbles. But they focused on the people around them, they focused on the world in which they lived, and they tried to do the best they could to create a better world to leave to their posterity. And even though we see what happens in the far off distant future with the last two parts of Deconstruction of Falling Stars with the two monks, one's secretly a ranger, and then of course in the far distant future where humanity has evolved into beings of pure energy rather than corporeal beings like we are now. And it's a dream that I think we all share, that we hope that the future will be better than what we currently live in, and we always have that hope that the future will be better. And Ivanova's monologue at the end, there was one line in particular that I thought was particularly poignant when she said, it taught us that we have to care for each other, because if we don't care about each other, nobody else will. And if we allow others to create the future, they'll create it for us. That is also equally true. And I think it's a very timely message, particularly in the times that we are now living in. Not to become overly political or anything, but if we allow those that think they are our betters to create the world that they want to live in rather than the world that we want to live in, then we will have lost so much that so many others have fought and bled and died for. And that should never be allowed to happen. Because the sacrifices of many should not be pushed aside for the unnecessary wants of a few.
Indeed.
So, I know Koj sent me a part 2. If y'all want to listen to that and everything, it's much shorter than part 1. It's only about 4 minutes, so I can bring that up. Or if y'all have any thoughts that you want to share before I do that, we can definitely do that. So, Elysium, Zod, it's your call.
I'll just say one thing when it comes to Babylon 5. Like other shows do have filler, and while you would say Babylon 5 has filler, it's more like mortar, because any filler Babylon 5 enhances the universe. It has, well, it mightn't have something to the great overall arc. It adds another brick to the wall. It adds something else to the universe that you can draw you further in. So,
yeah,
I think JMS did. This series is, I'd say, close to perfection.
Yeah, I am inclined to agree. So, is there anything you want to say at the moment?
No, not really. I mean, it's again, to me, it's sleeping in light, and sleeping in light for me is all emotions. So, yeah,
I got you. I understand, bud. Oh, and Be Geek, I could kill you. Not really. I'll MB Geek, if you're still in the chat, with your permission, I will actually share the photo you just sent me. I don't know if he actually is or not. Okay, he's in the chat. All right, I have to share this. Okay, hang on just a minute, guys. Bear with me for a minute. Let's see if I can't make that picture just a little bit bigger. There we go. That's better. Sorry if the resolution isn't the best, but I am just a little okay. I'm a lot envious. That's all the action figures from Babylon 5. Let's see. I'm thinking that's Jakar and Londo. There's Delin.
It always weirded me out. It always weirded me out how they couldn't really decide on the logo for these action figures. Like, notice how some of them have a green 5 and some of them have the red 5. And I kind of felt like that was stupid because you needed to keep these action figures uniformed. I mean, that's the weird thing about collecting these figures for Babylon. It was just another weird quirk in Babylon 5 history for me.
Yeah, no, I get that. I do. I totally get that, Zod. Well, MB Geek, thank you for sharing that, buddy. Appreciate it. Truly. So, all right, I'm going to go ahead and bring up this is Kojay's second video. Like I said, I checked these out and everything, and this one's about 4 minutes. So we'll run this, and then we'll share our thoughts on it. So just 1 second, guys. And no, I have not pre-listened to these. All right, hang on. 1 second, kids. Kids, we're all the same age here.
No, you got my maturity right.
All right. Hang on.
No. I'm sorry to do this to you. I'm not. 2 more things, actually. One thing is I like to mention that I enjoy seeing Jakar, the actor for Jakar, Andreas Katsoulis, who is playing a Centauri guard with Emperor Vir Koto, who is in bed with 2 ladies. And when the Ranger comes in, watch his face and you'll see his Jakar's face, of course. Of course, it's without prosthetics and all that stuff. But you listen to his voice and it's Jakar. So it's kind of cool seeing him there. But we got his goodbye in the previous episode. But he's like one of those characters who we've already seen what happens. And the other thing is when Vir Koto was talking about the Pakmara singing, and that Londo found it to be so beautiful that he believes that God sings with that voice. I thought that was beautiful, and I believe we have heard that voice and that singing in the episode where Kosh is taking Sheridan around the station, kind of like he's opening stuff to his mind or he's training him, and he takes him underground, and you see all these beings that are in this garb, like all this, and the garb is like all this like blankets or robes, and it's all brown and you don't see them, but they have some kind of humanoid but also big look to them. I believe, I don't even care what any Lurkers guide said or whatever says on whateverpedia, I believe that is the Pakmara, because how they sang so beautifully, and it sounded angelic, but also it sounded like old I think Catholic choir music, where it's very chanty and very deep based, and it just sounds beautiful. Like if you ever go to like an old church and they have like all these candles around, and they have people singing like that in the background, or some places it's like a tape or whatever, but I don't know. but it's that beautiful voice, and I think that was the Pakmara. It's just that Sheridan didn't know it was them. He just thought it was a bunch of robes, and he was like, "Wow, that's a beautiful thing." But I think Sheridan did get to hear what Veer was talking about that he and Londo heard, which is beautiful. And that's the thing I was saying earlier in the other video, that there's a lot of precious moments that are so brief that I think if we're too busy being distracted with things that are not important, we miss out on them. And people are in our lives for a certain amount of time. We don't even know when. Sheridan had known when his time was up with 20 year. Yeah, it was 20 years. So we got to make peace, and I think that's a gift, and we have that. So every moment that we're here, we're blessed, and to make the most of it. So without further ado, I can't think of anything else more damage to say. Oh, we did lose that actor. Who was also in Ninja Turtles: Secret of the Ooze. That's where I know him the most from, and it's just like
Exit out.
oh, whoops, ah, sorry. It's not just for David Warner, but what Mountain said in the last episode where we saw all of them leave through that elevator. It was very emotional, and this episode hits different. Like I am not married yet. I mean, but I've become a parent, and I've lost a lot of friends very close to me, and family members as well, including my uncle. I was there when he passed on. So this episode hits really, really deep, and it is beautiful for that because I think they took very good care of it. And I've talked way too much, and thank you very much once again. I love you all, and much love. God bless.
Yeah, and Koj brought up the fact that we did last week. We did lose David Warner, who was both a Grant. He only had one appearance on Babylon 5, but he also had a numerous appearances in the in Star Trek, the films.
Most notably Chancellor Gorkin from Star Trek 6.
Yeah, and of course we lost another member of the original cast this past week and everything. Nichelle Nichols,
Yes.
Commander Uhura, and well, unfortunately, there's only 3 of the original cast left now, and this episode, I talked about this a little bit last week, but this episode, Sleepy in Light, it really forces us to contend with the idea of our own mortality and what kind of legacy we leave behind us, whether it's by word or by action or by deed, or the memories that we leave with those around us, our family, our friends, so on, and particularly for those of us that have children. And this episode, it's not easy to discuss death. It's never easy to discuss death because we don't like considering the fact that we will one day leave this world. And we don't necessarily know, dependent on our belief systems, whether that's Christian, Protestant, or Catholic, whether that is of one of the Eastern religions, or what have you, whether that is of Judaism or Islam. We don't know what awaits us when our eyes close to this world. And it's some people say, well, organized religion is one massive con. I respectfully and most vehemently disagree.
Yeah.
I don't see organized religion as a con. I see it as a means by which we as people try to live a moral and ethical and decent life. There are people who say, well, you can be moral and ethical without religion, but where do you get your morals and your ethics from? And where do the people that you get your morals and ethics from get their morals and ethics from? And I'm not saying that those of us who are from the worldview of religious belief, but at least we have something to point to. Whether it is the Holy Book of the Bible, whether it is the Torah, whether it is the Quran, whether it is the writings of Buddha, or any of the other great philosophers from the Eastern religions. But speaking for myself, it gives me a great deal of comfort. And the fact that I've had my own brush with the holy, to know that there is something beyond this life, that there is something beyond this world that waits me. And I think this episode very much reinforces that idea. Granted, they rooted in a more science fiction, semi-spiritual lens, but for John to be able to go off with Lorian and the rest of them, and maybe even see Kosh again, the piece of Kosh that passed on and everything after they exorcised Yokesh from the station. And the fact that we do know that Kosh is, or at least a part of Kosh is still around, because it's Kosh himself who tells Sheridan where he's supposed to go when his time comes, particularly in Day of the Dead. But I feel like I've rambled a bit here, and Elysium, Zod, I open the floor to either one of you.
Oh, it's just mentioning about that is just Tolkien's quote when JMS is so influenced by him. It was and he beheld the white shores beyond them, a far green country under a swift sunrise. And that's what I imagined Sleeping in Light, that Sheridan setting off, and maybe that's what lies beyond the rim for him, and maybe for all of us.
Well, and the other, that is a great line from Return of the King. It's Gandalf giving a bit of comfort to Pippin, or Peregrine Took. And yeah, I think that is a very beautiful way of looking at the afterlife, particularly from someone who has experienced the afterlife, that of course being a Gandalf.
Well, Sheridan wouldn't you say that Sheridan is essentially experienced what lies beyond death, because Sheridan has died before.
Mm-hmm.
So if there is this paradise or this Valhalla under a tree or whatever you're speaking of, Sheridan would already know, because Sheridan's already been there. But in this situation, where he's going, beyond the rim, he's traveling beyond. I think he has transcended humanity, so therefore he is going to a different place, and he is going to thrive as being one with the universe. I don't think he necessarily is going to that afterlife, so to speak, because I think when humanity gets past a certain point, in the way that it was depicted to us in Babylon 5, human beings essentially become like the first ones.
Yeah.
So Sheridan is at one with the universe at that point. That's
think
just that's the way I interpreted it anyway.
No, that's not a bad interpretation, Zod. I think that's actually that holds a lot of merit because yeah, Sheridan. We do have to realize that Sheridan has died, and Lorian brought him back from the abyss.
I myself always took it because I know I'll deal with the tradition after that. Sheridan's body had died, but his soul had not moved on. He was in a place that was able to see Lorien and able to connect. And as Lorien said, he's able to breathe embers on the embers of a body, return it to life, but not forever. So
No.
while Sheridan did die, he knew there was something, he had a hint there was something beyond. He didn't really see it. Lita had seen further beyond than Sheridan had because she was in the mind of that ranger who died and she saw him walk into that tunnel of light. Sheridan never experienced that, so I still think Sheridan had well, he knew there was something, he couldn't say what, but it's like that line in the end of where he said, "Is there hope?" He says, "There's always hope," and I love that line. That even that there's always hope, and that's what Sheridan held on to.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even that particular instance, and this is going back a ways to see the end of season 3. Sheridan's resurrection does tie to a particular religious figure. I know it's not the one you think I might going to say. It ties to Lazarus when Christ
Yes.
tells them to remove the stone from Lazarus's tomb, and he calls Lazarus out. You can make the assertion that Sheridan's resurrection at the hands of Lorien is a science fiction representation of a religious event wherein a man was brought back from life, from death to life. And that is, I think, was a great piece of writing on the part of JMS. Granted, we all know JMS is an atheist, but he is at least conciliatory. We've often made this point on this channel that JMS and everything is, rather, while he is an atheist, he is at least open to the concepts of religious belief. He's not antagonistic towards them. And I think that speaks very highly of a person of JMS's creative ability, that he can set aside his own skepticism, while it might be warranted and everything. He doesn't know if anything exists. He doesn't necessarily believe that anything exists, but at least he has the good decency and the good common sense to entertain the idea that something might exist beyond this mortal plane, this corporeal plane of existence. And where he uses the concept of evolution to show that humanity does evolve beyond the need for a corporeal body to a being of pure energy. We could even look at what happens to Sheridan, where while his body may die, his soul, what makes him him, lives on and goes on to be with Kosh and the rest of the first ones and Lorien. And there's often been the question, I don't know if Tolkien ever addressed this or not, but there's always been the question, well, did Bilbo and Frodo die when they went into the West? And if I recall correctly, and I hope I'm not misrepresenting Tolkien here, I think he made the assertion that no, Bilbo and Frodo did not die, but they were released from the burdens that they had to carry in their life there in Middle-earth. Because if you remember from all of Frodo's exploits or all of his experiences, he would still experience physical pain on the anniversary of when he was stabbed on Weathertop by the Witch King. He would still get sick periodically from where Shelob the giant spider stabbed him. So Frodo carried those wounds with him the rest of his life. But I think what was nice is the fact that we can believe that Frodo was released from all that pain once he did pass into the West, once he passed into Valinor. And that he did not die, but he had a life that was free from pain. And the same is true of Bilbo. Because we do not get the idea that either one of them are about to die. They're simply leaving this world or leaving Middle Earth and going to a place where they will be free from pain. And that's a good thing, considering all the trials and tribulations that they all experienced. And the same is true of John Sheridan. He had experienced so much war and so much conflict, and he had lost the woman that he loved and seen the woman that he loved turned into something other than what she actually represented. And that, of course, being his first wife, Anna Sheridan. And he had fought so hard for so many years, whether it was on the battlefield or whether it was in conference rooms, to try and build a better world, whether it was through Babylon 5 or the Interstellar Alliance. And he finally had that release through Lorien. And he could finally lay his burdens down and simply be free of them. You know, there's a line of scripture that we Christians hold to. When we close our eyes to this world and we stand before God, we stand before Christ, we hope to hear this one phrase: "Welcome home, faithful servant. Go to thy rest." And I think that's something we all, for those of us that are a part of the Christian community, whether it's Protestant or Catholic, we hope to hear. And I think in Straczynski's own way, he's expressing that same idea for John. You have done your due diligence. Okay, I don't want to say due diligence. You have been diligent. You have been steadfast. You have fought the good fight. Now take your rest and pass on beyond the rim. Anyway, that's enough philosophizing for a minute. Elysium's, your thoughts.
Yeah, I agree with you. I believe that Sheridan is getting that ultimate moment in the best way that an atheist can convey that. So I feel like, that's another reason why I tend to feel like he doesn't necessarily die in the traditional sense this time. He essentially just becomes one with the universe and moves on to the next stage of humanity, which is essentially being being out there with the older races. And of course, and so, to me, that's what made it more beautiful than anything, because it shows that humanity will eventually achieve that goal of becoming one with the universe and becoming like the first ones, because humanity has to make way for younger races to come in and learn and have their trials and tribulations, you see. So it's nice to know that the evolution of things is possible and projected in such a beautiful way through Babylon 5. So I don't know. I looked at it that way. I thought it was one of the most beautiful, the most beautiful television endings I'd ever seen. And to this day, I still think it's one of the best endings ever to any TV show, period. So yeah. I don't know. I mean, I can't say enough positive things about it. I just think anybody that watches this series and gets to Sleeping in Light will feel fulfilled and will be very, very happy that they made that journey, because I feel like the final episode definitely pays off.
Yeah, it
It's
does.
like, speaking of the Christian thing, it's like the wine at Cana. It's like JMS saved his best for last.
Indeed. Yeah. I get that
Um,
reference. I mentioned Zod does too. So,
there was this one thing, just to kind of step back a little, that was how when Veer got his letter and the Ranger walked in, how different the Imperial Guard behaved than in any of the other portrayals of the Centauri before that. In front of subordinates, the Centauri Guard questioned the order of the Emperor in front of him, in front of other soldiers, in front of courtiers, and in front of Veer's wives.
Yep.
And the fact that Veer treated him as an equal, as, yes, your suggestion is merit, but you're wrong. It was just, to me, that was stunning.
Yeah, we haven't spent much time on Veer's involvement in this episode because he is kind of a stand-in for Londo, because, well, at this point, Londo has been dead for a number of years, as is G'Kar. We know that at this point, the Drakh have been driven from Centauri Prime, and that Centauri Prime is a independent state again, although I would imagine they are part of the Interstellar Alliance. But to see Veer at this stage of his life, he's older, he's wiser, he's more seasoned in a good way, and he's really come into his role as Emperor of the Centauri Prime, a free Centauri Prime, and one that is no longer beholden to the Drakh or to anyone else. And considering what we know from the Wikipedias and everything else, the Lurker's Guides, we know that Centauri Prime does thrive. We know that the Narn do thrive as well with the Interstellar Alliance. We know about that beautiful memorial that's built for G'Kar and for Londo. And we like to believe that the best years are not behind the Centauri, but are ahead of them, because they now have an emperor who was a commoner, was an ambassador, was an attaché, was a everyman. And it is a very fulfilling journey for Veer, because he started off as a nobody, and here he is now in a position where he can affect real change. And he's not necessarily answerable to anyone. He does, I imagine, have to answer to the Centaurum. But first and foremost, the buck stops with him. And you have to believe that the Centauri approve of Veer. They may not always agree with everything that he may say or do, but they are at least on board with him more so than any of the other emperors that they had, because unfortunately they had a compromised emperor in the person of Londo Mollari. Granted, he took on that compromise because of his own decisions and his own actions. And I got a very nice comment and everything on my Londo Mollari video and everything. Granted, it's been a few years since I did that video, but somebody pointed out, here's what happened in the aftermath of everything that happened with Londo that I wasn't aware of until we did get to season 5, and we did discuss this series more in depth. And granted, we don't have a lot of time with Veer in this episode, but what we do have with him is pertinent and is impactful. And we see Zach Allen working for him now, I imagine, as an advisor of some sort, security or whatever the case may be. And we see one of his wives try to pull him away, and Zach is like, no, Veer, you need to take care of this. Then you can go play. So it really does show the evolution of Veer, and it shows an incredible character's journey. From a bumbling, stumbling attaché to now the emperor of a resurgent Centauri Republic. And I think that's an awesome thing.
I just popped the link to your Londo video in the chat. So guys, after this, check it out.
Yeah, I did that video a few years ago. Hard to believe it's been a few years since I've done all those. Hard to believe in November I'll be celebrating 3 years on YouTube.
Yeah, actually, I should check. I think I'm 11 years on my own channel, and I'm just checking, going, "Oh God, that's terrifying."
Yeah. Well, yeah, you know, granted, not all the members of the council are here. Those that were here when this started, or those that are here currently. But you know, I have to say, I have met some really extraordinary people, whether it was in the chat or you, Elysium, or you, Zod, or Koj, or Vienna, or Adega, or Classic Comics. And to be a little melodramatic, you all have enriched my lives in your own unique ways, and you have made this channel everything I hoped it would be, and more. And the same goes to everybody that's in the chat, whether you have been here since the beginning or whether you just came in for, well, Babylon 5. And you probably are asking yourselves, well, Ambassador, where do you all go from here? I guess this is a good time as any to say, well, it's over. We're done. No, I'm kidding. We have discussed, and I think we will be doing reviews for Crusade. And I think we will cover that series in full from start to finish. I mean, we will be doing it in the official JMS watch order for that particular series. But what is beyond that? Well, that's something we've been discussing too behind the scenes. And at the behest and the encouragement of Elysium and Zodwriter and, well, MB Geek, and also one of my other good friends and everything I've met here on YouTube, AVP Alicia Victoria Parker, we are going to, in the next couple of months or so, start reviewing the Orville. So you will see a change in branding in terms of what we call the reviews, and you will also see an expansion of the group because MB Geek, at least as far as I know and everything, will be joining us for those reviews, as will Alicia as well, when we start reviewing the Orville, because they are two massive, and I mean massive, Orville fans. So we will be, of course, starting with season 1, and with Hulu being folded into Disney Plus, I will have access and everything to season 3. So we'll figure out the logistics of all that and everything so that we can all stay on the same page together. But this is not the end of the journey. This is the closing of a book. And another book will be opened when we do Crusade. But then another book after that will also be open. That will, of course, be the Orville. And I do say this here and now. I put my full support behind Renew Orville for season 4, which by all appearances is a likelihood.
Yeah, season 4 is very likely, and also season 5 is very likely as well, because Disney Plus is picking up the series, and that in and of itself means that more money will be available. So there you go.
Yeah. So I say this with all sincerity. Disney, get your ass in gear and announce renewal of season 4.
I think they'll announce it once the move is complete at the end of this month. That's what I'm expecting. And an announcement.
They'll probably announce it at the next D23 would be my guess, and everything more than likely. So that'll probably be when they announce that, along with all the stuff for Marvel and so on. But yeah, guys, any final thoughts? Anything you want to get out of your system while we're here? So
such a beautiful episode. I will just say again, the perfect bookend to a wonderful, gripping series that I'm happy to say I've watched Babylon 5 multiple times over the years, and I'm sure I will most certainly revisit it again. This was an amazing experience to be here with all of you talking about these episodes. I think that Babylon 5 is something everybody needs to experience at least once. And
Yes.
I for one I couldn't be happier with the way it turned out. I wish all the shows that I enjoyed watching ended as beautifully as Babylon 5. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah, I'm honestly inclined to agree with you. I mean, the only other series, and this will be a series I will be covering down the road, I'm just going to wait until probably next year to do it. And I think that's another favorite series from the 90s. Well, a couple of series from the 90s and going into the early 2000s. Zod, please don't let your eyes explode out of your head for what I'm about to say. But I will be doing reviews for Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Angel. So I know we all have our issues with the guy that created those series, but I think at least to pay respect to those that worked on the series outside of Joss Whedon is warranted. And like I said, it was a series that I loved. It was a series that was very transformative for me as a geek, particularly as a teen in the 90s. And I want to give it its due. As the old saying goes, I will remove the art from the artist. So whether you agree or disagree with that move, that's your right. So
I think that's a good way to look at it, that so many great works of art, so many great things have been done throughout human history, that if we judged on the person, we would never see. And
yeah,
I
that's
think
true.
we should be able to separate the art from the artist.
Yeah. So,
And,
well, I am not one to belabor an exit. So I think with that, we are going to close out Council of the Ones, at least for this particular part of it. We will be back, of course, next week. We will begin season 1 and only of Crusade, and that will, of course, be at our normal time of 3:30 Central Time, provided nothing comes up, nothing goes sideways between now and then. Everything will be back on our normal time of 3:30 Central Time here Thursday afternoon. So keep your eyes and ears out for that. I am working on. I've got several other irons in the fire that I'm currently working on. So I'll be putting out announcements on my social media for those as well. But I will make one final closing remark. When I started this channel almost 3 years ago, I set out to review this entire series from start to finish. And it has been an extremely rewarding and enlightening experience for myself. And I hope it has been for you all as well. Those of you on this council and those of you in the chat as well. And I look forward to what the future holds for us, for this channel and for this council, whether it's as the Council of Ones or whatever name we adopt in the future. But we will strive, much like the Interstellar Alliance did, to build a better future. And build a future where we discuss, we debate, and we celebrate pop culture in all of its aspects and facets. But we close, as we closed last week, with the Code of the Rangers. We live for the one. We die for the
Yeah,
one.
for the one.
Until Vinny. In Valen's name.